Okay, I have to remember to turn it on. Okay, hey, we're going to start. We're finished with Columbus, and a little disturbing that he just never seemed to repent and turn to the Lord. But we have hope today. We have some really good people. We have some bad people, and we have some really good people. So we're going to start with John Cabot. John Cabot was an Italian merchant. Here is a picture of him. He looks like a really nice dude, huh? He looks kind of spooky. But anyway, he was Italian merchant, so he was from Italy, and then he moved to, all right, so he is from Italy. Can y'all see this? But he moved to England, and he got the king there because he wanted to go and find new worlds. And so he got him to send him to the new world. And he told him, I think I know a better way to get to, okay, now, so remember, they think they're going here. They think they're ending up here. They thought Columbus thought he was here. They didn't know anything about this. Nothing about this. So he leaves from here and he goes, I think I know a better way to get there. Let me go straight across here. So he thinks he's going to end up here. Okay, he goes straight across here and finds Canada and Nova Scotia. And they had cod and they had turkeys he brought home. And so they loved all that because they'd never had those kind of things. But when he got there, he put a flag for Italy and one for England, because those were his two countries. He also put a huge 30-foot cross, and then he came back again on his second voyage and somehow got lost at sea because nobody ever heard from him. But a few years after Columbus, a man by the name of Amerigo Vespucci, so that's where we get the name America, he comes to the New World, and he was the first one that realized that this is not Asia. This is a new land, and so that's why we name America after him. And he ended up in Brazil. He ended up way down here. So he comes from Italy, probably through here, all the way down here in Brazil. So not much about him, but let's get back to the Spanish. Okay, so the Spanish, when they came, wow, they just treated the Indians so bad. But remember this also, the Indians were very bloodthirsty. They were cannibals, most of them. But their whole thing, remember, Columbus was Christ bearer. He was supposed to bring the gospel to them, and he didn't. So after him, Cortez. I don't know if you've ever heard of Cortez. He comes and he gets to the Aztecs. The Aztecs were in what is now Mexico City. So let me bring you over here and show you what is now Mexico City. So he comes in here from Spain, all the way across here, and comes to Mexico City. Okay, he gets there, and they think that he is the reincarnation, like their god that came back alive, and his name was Quetzalcoatl. So they bring him straight to their leader in their capital, which was Mexico City. And so Cortez, being a conquistador, he immediately takes the ruler, who was Montezuma, and he takes him captive, and he takes control over his people. So then Pizarro, he comes, and he does the same thing in Peru. Peru is down, it's over here. So I'm not really sure how he got to Peru, but way over here. And he gets there, and he took over the Incas, and their chief was Atahualpa. So he took him captive, and he said, okay, if you want your chief back, you have got to, and he showed him this room. He goes, you got to fill it from the floor to the ceiling with gold and silver. And they did it. And he's like, okay, well, this room over here, he kept on upping the thing because he didn't want to let the ruler go, because he knew as soon as he let the ruler go, he was dead meat. But this happened, this cruel treatment of the Indians, who were bloodthirsty people, I have to say. But it happened all through the Caribbean, all through these islands right here, all through, Central America with the Spaniards. And so it just looked like, wow, is anybody going to get this right? Is anybody going to be nice to the Indians and actually, lead them to the Lord? And in one of the places in the Caribbean, what they would do is take all the Indians out of the field. They were farmers, and so they would take them out of the field and make them work in the mines because all they wanted was gold. Well, then there's no food because nobody's, doing crops. So the people died of starvation. So this just happened all through the history of the conquistadors. But then somebody got an idea that they should bring monks with them. Okay, monks were these, let's see if I can do this up a little bit. Monks were these people that had given their whole life to the Lord. And they were from the Catholic Church, and they were Franciscan monks and Dominican monks. And you've probably seen them. They got their little haircut, and they got their brown robe, and they just look, they're monks. And they totally devoted themselves to the Lord. So they gave up all of their wealth, everything they possessed. They said they would never marry. They were just married to the Lord. But they also served the Pope, which was not a good thing. But anyway, they came with them. And back in the church in Europe, they had fallen to such lies and such... it was just very sinful in the church. So the Pope was supposed to be God to them. This was the Roman Catholic Church. It was the only church. So they would sell what they call indulgences. So say you wanted to go steal something. You could go to the church and buy an indulgence, a piece of paper that says you buy it. Okay, you pay money to go and do this sin you want to do, and you're okay. And then you could buy a quick trip to heaven. So like, instead of like we buy insurance, life insurance, well, they bought these indulgences that said, get some more books, that they could go to heaven. They didn't have to go to purgatory. They believed you went to purgatory first, and you had to earn your way to heaven in purgatory. I don't know. I'm not a Catholic. And I don't know if purgatory is just a really bad place to go or what, but they would buy these before they died, saying that they could go straight to heaven. Okay. I mean, even I could figure that one out. But they had taken away like if you went to church in the Catholic Church then, they would read the whole sermon in Latin. Well, none of these people spoke Latin, so they had no idea what God's laws really said, except for the monks who had a copy of the scripture. Well, there was this one monk who had studied and loved the Lord, and his name was Martin Luther. Well, he realized that everything they were doing in the church was wrong, so he wrote his thesis. And wrote 95 points of what they were doing and what the Bible said. And, of course, his professors go, oh, no, you can't turn this in. So what he does is he takes his 95 theses to the church in the middle of the night and takes a big old nail and he hammers it on the door of the church. Well, they wake up the next day and, they know it's him, and he didn't care. Because at this point, he's like, I would rather die telling the truth than to, defraud all these people that we've been lying to and to live a lie. So from him, his name is Martin Luther, came the Lutheran Church. And I have to say, when these denominations started, they didn't look anything then like they look now. But then he had read in the Bible that the just are saved by grace, not by buying an indulgence to get to heaven. And so he was adamant about that. And there was other people that felt the same way, so they formed a group, and they called them the Lutherans because he was Martin Luther. Well, he started the Protestant Reformation, and many other people rose up and said, like, John Wesley, and he started the Methodist Church, and a bunch of people that stood up. This was the Protestant Reformation that got people out of the Catholic Church and into the truth. Okay, so, but they were martyred for doing that, because the only way was the Catholic Church. Okay, so dawn of the 16th century, and more people, vessels are coming to the New World, and these friars are coming with them, these monks, these Franciscan and Dominican monks. And they couldn't be intimidated with the threat of death that the Indians gave them, because when you don't love your life unto death, when you're willing to die for what you believe, Satan is scared of you. So they started making a mark for God in the New World. And they started orphanages, and schools for the Indians, refugees for the poor. They started caring for these people and sharing the gospel with them. The first white man to explore the land in actually the United States was Marcus Donizo, and he explored New Mexico. Now, you got to know that New Mexico, all right, so here's New Mexico right now. Then it was much bigger. It was huge, because the states, there weren't 50 states. So it was really big. It was right in the middle. And so he explored New Mexico. Then Francisco de Coronado led his expedition in New Mexico, and he was looking for these 7 cities of Cibola, because he heard that the streets were made of gold. So you know what he was looking for. That was in 1539. And but the Spanish back home started realizing that the peaceful way the monks did it was a lot better than the conquistadors. So they started encouraging these monks to go over there and be missionaries. So the Spaniards had this system that they called the encomiendo system, which means entrust in English, encomiendo. And they sent military leaders and conquistadors, and they would come over and they would map out the land they wanted, and then whatever Indians lived on it, that was they lorded over them. They were the landlords, or the, what did they call them? Overlords. So they made them slaves. They made them work for them. Well, one guy that came over, he was an overlord, and he was just like the other ones, really cruel. But God got a hold of his heart, and he thought, this is just wrong. I can't keep doing this. So he started bucking the system. In fact, he went against it and came back to Spain, and he wrote a book about it. And he made Charles V change laws to protect the Indians, and that they couldn't go over there and be cruel to them. So he published his book. It was called The History of the Indies, and he was the whistleblower of today. He just slammed what was going on over there. He told them that, we're taking over their land, we're being cruel, we're making them work for us, just all the horrible things that they were doing to the Indians. He wrote in his book. Well, everybody wanted a copy, but nobody liked him because it made them look horrible. They were the villains. So I wanted to read an excerpt of that, page 72. When they saw every day, this is when, what's his name? Las Casas saw every day how the Indians were perishing from the inhumane cruelty of the Spaniards, how their people were ridden down by horses. They were overrun with horses, cut to pieces with swords, eaten and torn asunder by dogs, burned alive, and subjected to all kinds of exquisite torture. Those of certain provinces decided to resign themselves to their fate and give themselves over to the hands of their enemies without a struggle. In other words, the Indians just gave up. Well, that is just sad, and he saw how sad that was. So that's why he wrote his book. So, he didn't care about his reputation. He lost his reputation. He lost his friends. But he did what was right, and that was right. God, he has a reputation in heaven. Okay, so then the friars spread the gospel in New Mexico and Baja California. Baja California is this part of California, this little part that hangs down. They call that Baja California. So and some of them were killed and martyred by the Indians, and some of them lived and were able to bring them to the Lord, but they gave their life to Jesus. There was one man named Alonso de Benavides. Alonso de Benavides. I bet that's it. Benavides. He started 25 missions and in New Mexico, and he recorded baptizing 80,000 Indians. Wow, that's amazing. Okay, then the Jesuits, they went into Arizona and California, and they brought salvation and the good news to the Indians there, and they found no gold. Thank goodness. You know, there was gold in California, but they just didn't find it, and it was good because it kept them toward their goal, which was winning the Indians to the gospel. On the East Coast, over here, was a different story. They were, in 1513, Ponce de Leon was seeking, he was seeking the fountain of youth in Florida. He had just heard this tale about this water, this certain fountain, that if you swam in it, you would get healed of all your diseases and you would be young, eternally young. So they never found it. I guess people are still looking for it. It's in a jar right now, and you can buy it online. But the Indians were so fierce they couldn't colonize them. So, and you know, the white men came with diseases and gave it to the Indians because they didn't have their immunities against their diseases. The Indians gave the white men diseases because they didn't have immunities against theirs. So everybody was dying. Then in 1562, a group of French Huguenots. Now, Huguenot means a Protestant, and they were looking for religious freedom because in France, all Europe, everywhere, they were persecuting people that broke off from the Catholic Church. So they came to Beaufort, South Carolina, but they called it, here's South Carolina, they called it St. Augustine. And the Spaniards tried to settle there, but they were either killed by the Indians or they died of their disease. So next came the French Jesuits, and they were known for their zeal. And there's a certain man in 1540, Ignatius of Loyola, and he'd been a knight and a soldier, so he'd been knighted. So that's great. Honor to be a knight. Well, he gave it all up for Jesus to come and be a missionary. And he started this group called the Society of Jesus. And he, in this society, was the most brilliant scholars. And they were just disciples of Jesus who gave up everything. They gave up the hope of getting married. They gave up everything just to live for Jesus, but they served the Pope, which just is kind of sad. And they had these three aims, which is also sad, because the first one was they wanted to purify their soul from sin. Okay, well, only Jesus, the Holy Spirit, can do that. So the way, if you want to purify your soul from sin, you just fall in love with Jesus and it'll fall off. But to try to do that is impossible. So they were always giving up everything, probably fasting a lot, you know. But that's not God's way. Okay, and then they tried to find God's will in the church. Well, you need to broaden your horizons. I mean, maybe God's will is not just in the church. But anyway, and then they wanted to consecrate their mind and body to Jesus. So their religion was built on works. How can I get good enough for God? Okay, well, we know it's by grace. But they did do a lot of good work. They moved into the northeast part of of America, and they came to bring God's light there. And one of them was Jacques Cartier. And when he got there, he put up this huge cross, and he discovered the St. Lawrence River. He taught the Indians. He would teach them the first part of John, the Gospel of John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word, that part. And then he would skip to the end and talk about the suffering of Jesus and the crucifixion. But somehow he managed to stop before the resurrection, because that's the power of God, is the resurrection. But that's how their Jesuits were. They were all about, what can I give up? How can I be like Jesus in his suffering instead of being like Jesus in his resurrection? Because the resurrection is the power and the life. So, but they had a heart that they meant well. They meant really well. Then Samuel de Champlain came. Oh, I might need to stop because I don't want to go too much more than 20 minutes. He was the father of New France. That's what they called over here, New France. He and his crew settled near this Lake Huron, which, that's part of the Great Lakes right over here. So they settled around there, and they built a chapel for the Indians to worship God in. And they spread the light all the way to Ottawa, which Ottawa is in Canada. And they went to Maine, way over here, and Illinois. And in the Illinois, they met the Illinois, what they call the Illinois Indians. And they went to the Mississippi Valley, which, all right, so the Mississippi River all the way down here, well, right here. So they went there. Okay, I'm going to stop right there because it's 21 minutes, and I will start over on a new one so y'all can stop. But I hope this was interesting. It is just refreshing to finally see how God is making his way to our world where he wants to bring the gospel of light. So have a wonderful afternoon. Bye.